Oh, check that out! Did you see? I can't believe you just did that. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Oh my. Oh, you can't see, can you? Were the last 10 seconds of this video frustrating for you? Imagine those who have been permanently affected with these or different disabilities, sometimes multiple disabilities. According to the CDC website, there are currently around 61 million adults with a disability in the United States. This is about 26% of the US population. Any one of us could join these statistics at some point in our lives, including you or a loved one. There are many individuals working to create a digitally inclusive world today. In fact, looking back, many of the technological advances came about in hopes to help individuals with disabilities. For example, the first typewriter was created by an Italian inventor, Pellegrino Turri, in the early 1800s. He wanted to help his blind friend communicate better when writing. The creation of the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell stemmed from his interest in creating a sort of visible speech to teach and benefit deaf individuals. But it could also be argued that technological advances have unintentionally created barriers for the disabled community, as both of these inventions were precursors for items that would not easily be used by disabled individuals. While those without disabilities have benefited from things created with disabled individuals in mind, the disabled population has not always benefited from things created for the general public. Strides towards technological and digital inclusion have been made, but there is still much to be done and of much importance for day-to-day living. Today, we wanted to share with you some of the experiences of the blind and visually impaired. We all face challenges due to COVID-19, but the blind and visually impaired members of our communities face additional challenges when everything transitions online because much of the internet has yet to fulfill its promise of accessible content. But why is digital inclusion so important? Well, most job searches and applications are now online, which creates difficulties for individuals with little to no vision. Also, online transitions have cut costs in education, healthcare, and news distribution, and searches for resources, bill payment, and networking are much easier online. But you may think, it's 2020, so accessibility issues are a thing of the past, right? Unfortunately, that is not the case.
The hardest thing is when you are using a website and there's an accessibility issue that stops you in your tracks.
Like you mentioned about icons, like especially like on websites. Sometimes those icons are actually images that are actually placed in when they build the website. Mm-hmm. So if they're not properly labeled, then it's just gonna like either skip it or just say blank 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 or graphic graphic graphic.
Things are becoming more inaccessible. Touchscreens are useless for us if there's no speech. But additionally, I was talking to a friend of mine who is sightless, and he had an app installed on his iPhone. And he was trying to find something in the app that would enable him to download something. Well, someone else who was sighted told him, I see the download button, it's right here. But the synthetic voice called VoiceOver could not find it, so the blind person was unable to download what they wanted, and they had to turn VoiceOver off, give it over to the sighted person who could see the download button, hit the download button, and then go ahead and get the audio files or video files, whatever they were wanting. So, and iOS is fairly accessible, it's pretty good. But there's still those moments where there's features, whether they be buttons or tabs, that we can't get to. And yet someone sighted can see it right there on the screen and go, it's right here, I don't know why you can't get to it. And I don't think it's all that difficult, I'm not a programmer. But to add text or numbers or something, some kind of tag to a button or some kind of graphic that's necessary, I don't know that it would really take that much more time, it's just a matter of doing it. The one thing people have to understand about screen reader software is it only reads numbers or letters. That's it. It's what they call in programmers' language ASCII code. So if a graphic or a button does not have an ASCII code tag assigned to it, a screen reader will pass it up.
Which creates difficulties.
Oh yeah. And that's what happens to us all the time. There's things we just can't find. Or I might be traveling a website and I'm going up and down arrow and there is a link, but there's no text to describe or explain what the link is. And so it'll say link, the speech will say link, but I don't know what the link goes to because it doesn't have a title to it.
Well, there's not much you can do. You can just kind of keep turning the computer off and on and hope for the best. You can hit a few buttons. Sometimes I just hit enter, space, escape, and hope that one of those things will, if there's a dialog box that pops up, that it'll get me to the logon screen. Because a lot of screen readers will not work until you get into the login screen. But anything before that is not useful. So initially I planned to do IT work, but then when I realized the screen reader doesn't work in the BIOS screen before Windows comes up, then I realized I wasn't going to be able to be in that field.
I've definitely had to work with them, and I've had to find my own resources because I think I might be the first blind person that's gone to my campus. They just weren't prepared.
Probably appliances with the older, probably you're talking in the 80s, 90s, were easier to use. Everything now, if it has buttons on it, goes into a screen. Like, for example, the ATM at the bank has Braille on it. But how many blind people do you see drive up to an ATM and then on top of it, there's a screen? And so you have to touch a few buttons and then it prompts you on the screen. So it's really not accessible.
I went to get tickets to a game with my son pre-COVID, and because the website wasn't very accessible and I was limited by how long I had to buy those tickets, it took me a while to navigate around that website. But with perseverance, I managed to sort of get the tickets and work my way to the checkout. And when I went to say pay, the website said timeout. And so that is a really big point of frustration, because essentially it was a very binary situation there. Either I could buy the tickets or I couldn't buy the tickets. And not being able to buy the tickets meant that I then had to ask my 12-year-old son to actually navigate and buy the tickets for me. And so that really took away a lot of my independence.
Some things are thousands of dollars. That's pretty normal to see that price tag. Sometimes you can get things with the help of the state, but it's not always available.
My wife and I go to a restaurant, the waitress will walk up to my wife, what does he want?
I was unfortunately let go from my job because of my disability, and it took me a year to apply for SSDI because it was just such a complicated application and process. And then I was denied because they said I wasn't legally blind, although I had sent them the certificate of blindness and the doctor's paperwork.
People assume that we can't do things,
We asked an expert to learn more about accessibility milestones and solutions to these unresolved issues. With a PhD in Internet Studies and project management experience across for the nonprofit, corporate, and government sectors, Dr. Hollier is an internationally recognized researcher and speaker. Furthermore, he is legally blind, which means he has both a professional and personal understanding of the importance of accessibility. Dr. Hollier is the CEO and co-founder for the Centre for Accessibility in Australia, which offers guides and services to advocate for digital access.
What's encouraging today is that whether we're talking about Windows or Mac, Android or Apple products like iPads, the accessibility features are largely built in and they're at a quality which is quite usable. Also, there are some great free tools you can download as well to further enhance accessibility. So it's really encouraging that when everyone's on a tight budget these days, and it's great that there are some really good accessibility options available today. A question I often get asked is, how good is the technology these days? Well, I think it's probably worth just quickly reflecting on where we've come from. So one of the great things is that the technology, particularly to support people who are blind or visually impaired, has progressed a lot in recent years. But if we go back to the 1980s, we had the 1981 International Year of Disabled Persons. And it was really in the 1980s that we saw the first very basic text-to-speech programs implemented in software. And I've just got a little sample of one here from SAM, the software automated mouth, which was available on popular 8-bit computers of the day, including Commodore 64. This gives you a bit of an idea on what text-to-speech used to be like.
Hello, my name is Sam. I am a speech synthesizer on a disk. I can talk with no expression, or I can really stress certain words. Sometimes I talk in a high voice, but other times I talk very low. I can talk very quickly if you want, or I can slow things down. You see, I can do whatever you want me to.
Now, if you now have a headache after listening to that, I'll apologize. It's pretty rough. But that was the best of the day. Now, in fairness, that entire program did fit into 39K of memory. So it is pretty remarkable for what it was able to achieve. But the good news is that today things have certainly come a lot further, and we have a lot more variety and choice in the type of assistive technologies and accessibility tools available to us. One of the really terrific things about Apple is that back in 2005, when there weren't any really good assistive technologies built into mainstream operating systems, especially when it comes to desktop operating systems, Apple introduced the VoiceOver screen reader in macOS 10.4 Tiger. And until then, it was just, the only options were expensive options. And interestingly, when that happened with the Mac, there were people online who said, once upon a time I spent thousands of dollars on assistive technology. Now I spend $1,000 and I get a free Mac, which I thought was a great way of thinking about it. Going back to 2009, again, the idea that a blind person could easily access and use a touchscreen device was considered almost impossible until Apple did it by introducing the gesture-based screen reader VoiceOver in the iPhone 3GS. And that completely changed mainstream accessibility. However, if that only works, as we were saying before, if apps and websites are designed in a way that supports these technologies. If not, instead of having things read out to me, I might hear things like unlabeled button or just image, where I should get a description of what that image is. So one of the challenges we have is that there is great accessibility features built into our everyday products, be it Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android. However, if we don't get things designed in an accessible way, then that's really where the challenge lies. And what we've discovered is that for people with disabilities, there's been great challenges as a lot of people were left behind in the rush to try and get online, and a lot of the requirements and needs and support weren't really there. Certainly, I don't feel that it is fair in my personal view. I think accessibility should not be an add-on. It shouldn't be an extra expense. It should just be a part of, especially in the education context, it should just be a part of the platform.
In 2018, an estimated 9 out of 10 websites were not accessible. Time magazine recently shared an article titled, "None of the 2020 presidential candidates' websites are fully accessible to disabled voters." If the problem lies in the interface and in web development, not in the lack of accessibility features, is there a solution for inaccessibility? To find out more, we asked Dr. Greg Vanderheiden. Dr. Vanderheiden is a professor in the School of Information Studies, iSchool, and director of the Trace Research and Development Center at the University of Maryland. He has been working in the area of access to technology for almost 50 years and is a co-founder of Raising the Floor, an organization focused on working to ensure that people who face barriers due to a disability, lack of literacy, lack of digital literacy, and aging are able to fully understand, access, and use the digital world. Dr. Vanderheiden distinguished between digital literacy, which is a skill that can be acquired through training and experience, and digital affinity, which ascribes an inherent talent to use and understand technology that one has or doesn't. Those with digital affinity are creating our newest technologies and are unintentionally creating a digital gap. Dr. Vanderheiden believes we are creating a world that's so technical that it is becoming a barrier to people and we are actually disabling people. His most recent work is Morphic, which is a mainstream digital simplification product that includes accessibility and brings inclusion with it. Morphic provides quick, easy access to settings that help make computers easier to use, based on the user's unique needs. Morphic provides one-click personal settings to make your screen easier to see, hear, and understand, changing even language settings as needed. And the best part is that it transfers these assertive technology settings to any other computer using Morphic. Well, what else does the future hold? Will we continue to unintentionally create barriers for disabled individuals and those without digital affinity?
So, if we're going to have in the future everything we got today, plus we're going to have gesture, plus we're going to have voice, plus we're going to have direct brain interfaces. So now you could say, well, that's going to be great because people who have disabilities, they'll just, from their brain, they'll just be able to control things. They won't have to worry about having a physical disability or a visual disability because we just connect to the brain. Well, that assumes that everybody is naturally going to be as adept at doing this. So all you're going to do is you're going to have another dimension of haves and have-nots, cans and cannots. One thing that I have proposed as a way of addressing this is we have a situation now where we have all the rules for even the old technology, but very few of them get done. We have companies that can't possibly train all of their people to make all of their products accessible because it's just too hard to do, and they constant rollover. And even when we make them accessible, we still are pretty bad for cognitive language and learning disabilities and other types. So what if, instead of this old method of trying to get people to design things to work for everybody, which you can't do, and you can't train everybody, what if you said, just design your interfaces however you want to, and as long as half of the population can use it, the more able half can use it, we will create an infobot that is smart enough not to be as smart as the bright people who are really good, but the average. Okay, so if you can make it so it works for the median, we'll create an infobot that can understand, perceive, and it doesn't have to plug in. It'll just look at the screen, and the same way you can see what the screen is, it can figure out the screen is using machine vision and AI and stuff like this. That's the front end. And then the back end, what it would do is you can then plug in an interface for each person. You have an individual interface generator. So if somebody's blind, this would look at the screen, figure out what it is, and then it would present to the blind person an interface, which is the interface that we would all be using if none of us had vision. So instead of a blind person having to use a screen reader to use an audio interpretation of a visual interface, the blind person would get an interface that was optimized for use with no vision. Okay? And a deaf person would get one optimized for what the screen would look like if nobody could hear. And the person with a cognitive or language or learning disability would get a screen, would have it presented to them in a form that would match what the interface would be for all of us if we all had that same set of abilities or disabilities. Okay, so now we don't have to worry about creating interfaces that everybody can use. You just make a standard interface. And the nice part about this is several things, but one of them is the manufacturers don't have to spend all their time trying to figure out how to do something they're never going to be able to do anyway. They can focus on A, designing really good interfaces, and then B, most of these places have teams that are working on accessibility. They could contribute to building better interfaces for each of the different types of individuals. All right. Secondly, instead of it being like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% of things being accessible, everything would be accessible, right? Because the infobot can handle any web page. And so without people having to do anything, their pages would be accessible. Thirdly, and this is really good for all of us, but especially for people who are older, when you get old, we talk about you going from fluid intelligence to crystalline intelligence. Have you ever met somebody who is older and they can tell you all about whatever their profession is? They can tell you how to cook. They can, they get all this stuff, and they're bright, they're interesting, and everything else. But if you try and teach them something, they can't learn it. Okay, so whatever they know, and it's great. But it's crystalline in that they can't learn something new. And so you try to teach them, okay? So the worst thing for people who are getting older is interfaces that just change. It's the same interface, it does the same thing, only it's completely different. If you are a PC user and I gave you a Mac, or you're a Mac user and I give you a PC, they do the same thing, but you're completely lost, right? And it's like, what the heck happened here? It's like, you can't find anything, you can't do anything. And it does all the same things, but it changed, okay? Now, with the crystalline intelligence, what it means that every day, it's like it's the first time you saw it. So every day, it's confusing. With the individual user interface generator, it gives you an interface. And though these can change every day you want to, the infobot looks at it, but the interface it presents back is the same. Okay? And when you get a new thing, have you ever gone to a new cable company, or you went from Roku to Apple TV, or even Apple TV decided to change its interface. And all of a sudden one day you go, what? And you can't find anything anymore, all right? So imagine that they can do all the changing they want to, but what you get is you can say, I just want my old interface. And you would be able to have the old interface, the one that you know, and be able to use it. So these are just some of the advantages. So when you're talking about next generation interfaces, I'm talking about 20 years from now.
As far as the American Disabilities Act, you know, I see changes. I see things are improving. So I mean, I can say that. I can vouch for that. Even calling into a credit card service, they send me a Braille companion card. So I see that changes are happening. It's definitely going to be slow, and it's going to be harder to keep up with as more technology becomes inaccessible.
One of the biggest challenges, and for all disability groups, but particularly for people who are blind or have low vision, is getting access to education, and then in turn getting access to employment. So what the pandemic has provided as a potential opportunity is that courses that were never dreamed to be possible to be online are now available online, especially in the arts, where it's thought that performance or design or drawing or things like that just couldn't be possible to be online. We're now are being delivered online through a range of video recordings or uploading art, or this is just as one example. And so what we've seen is that this has massively opened the door for educational opportunities for people with disability to undertake courses that were just not possible to have done even last year. And in turn, employers are also now coming to the view that when it was thought originally that you couldn't possibly have someone work remotely, we now discover that actually pretty much everyone can work remotely, and also productivity has improved, not dropped off as a lot of employers feared. So again, from the accessibility point of view, we now have great new opportunities in employment for people with disabilities to be involved. Even though WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, really it's content. I mean, WCAG applies to documents, WCAG applies to email. There's aspects of WCAG that can apply to social media. So, I mean, a few quick tips would be that, make sure that if you are sending emails with images, make sure those images have alternative text. Make sure links are descriptive. So one of the big challenges with communication is that you might have a link that says things like click here or read more. And if you're using a screen reader and you land on a link and it says click here, you're like, well, click here to what? Read more to what? So making sure links are really descriptive so that when people do pick that up with assistive technologies, it's really clearly explained what that link is. And certainly making sure text is well structured. Good use of color contrast is a really big one. And yeah, basically, if you have a requirement for forms to be filled out, making sure that the form is well labeled so that people know what to put in the form. And if people make mistakes, just making sure that it's clearly indicated what those mistakes are. So it's just a few, just pulling out a few aspects from the WCAG standard there, particularly around emails and social media, making sure that videos are captioned if you do upload or reference videos in social media, making sure that those are captioned.
What is rewarding is when you graduate from the, oh, I'm trying to help people, to when you get to know them and you meet them?
Well, I just think that people need to know that we're very normal. We love to be in normal conversations. When you say, hey, Blake, did you happen to see, it's okay to say that. Did you see this movie? Because chances are maybe I did. And my wife and I do go out and we do check out movies, and she's very good at giving me some insight on anything that she feels like I might have missed with these little 2-second snapshots. She's really good at it. And so in fact, we live a sighted world for the most part. We like to know what things look like. We like to know what you're seeing when we're walking by something. If you see a beautiful blue sky, we love to hear about it and what your imagination is bringing you. Very, very colorful. And I feel like I don't miss out that way. And so I think the more people know how normal we are, the better it is. And it takes a moment for that to happen. Because if I did not know anybody who was blind or visually impaired, and I wasn't blind myself, I'd never worked with anybody, then how in the world would I know any better? And so it used to offend me at first, when people thought how little they thought we could accomplish and that kind of thing. But then I got to thinking, as I became older, I thought, how would I know, if I didn't know? And so we're excited about educating the public on what we can do. Obviously, that's where we want to put our emphasis.
Inclusivity matters, and it's a civil right. As we say hello to a new year, please remember not to turn a blind eye to inaccessibility. Accept our challenge to share this video, educate others, and donate to organizations, including a Lighthouse for the Blind near you and Centers for Accessibility.
Dr. Scott Hollier that we heard from, it should not be seen as a burden or a chore or as something extra. It should just be a standard, because everyone, whether they are blind, have cerebral palsy, are deaf, or have an intellectual disability, everyone deserves every opportunity they can get in order to experience life.